What's up, everybody? Good morning. Curtis Wilkerson here with Inside Arkansas and the Pod at the Palace, coming to you with another game day preview. This is a big one. I mean, there's no such thing as a must win your second game in SEC play. It's January the 8th or whatever. But let's put it like this. Tonight is a prove it game for the Razorbacks against a ranked Ole Miss squad in Bud Walton Arena. And it feels like this team needs to make a statement, right? They need to remind people what they're capable of, remind people who they are, or at least who we hope or think that they are. I really hope we see Bud Walton Arena rocking 6 p.m. tonight. Look around this league right now, the SEC, and holding serve in your own building. It's so, so important. And we know that at its best, Bud Walton Arena gives as big of a home court advantage as anywhere in the country. And I think Arkansas coach Chin Coleman agrees with that. He called for it, and you can tell based on his words here that they're hoping to have a strong turnout and a rowdy atmosphere. They need that six-man type of energy from the Razorback fans in this game.
We need for that building to feel like it's felt the times that we've come in here now. We need the fans to support the Razorbacks the way that they've supported them, what we've seen when we were the opposing team, and now we're family and we're Razorbacks. And so we want it to feel the way that it's felt when we've come in here as an opposer, as the enemy, that we need the building rocking. We need the building turned all the way up to help our men feed off of that energy. And so I've seen it before. I've witnessed it before when you can't even call out. And I'm normally one of the loudest persons in the building on the locker room, on the sideline. And our guys hear me when I scream out different calls and I scream out different schematics. Everybody hears me. And I've been in this building before where I have not been heard. And so that is what I need for that building, what we need for that building to feel like.
Bud Walton Arena wasn't what it usually is last season. Now, it ain't because of the fans. It's because the team stunk. But way too many teams who have no business coming in to Bud Walton Arena and winning a game came in there and did it last season. And then hasn't been as energized this year so far as probably Cal had hoped and the team had hoped, but they haven't played anybody. Like, there hasn't really been a game to get excited about. I get that. But here's what I'll say. Now there's no more excuses, right? And this is when we really need to see an energized Bud Walton Arena. Remind everybody what it's like to come in there and play in Bud and how hard it is to get out of there with a win. I hope we see that tonight. A decent amount of folks looked at that Tennessee game over the weekend as like a fraud check or a sign that Arkansas isn't for real. And I get it. They didn't look for real in that game, but I really do. And I acknowledge, like, there are some red flags that popped up. Definitely some things they got to figure out. They're a little bit behind where they need to be right now. But I do think a lot of what we saw in that game in Knoxville was just uncharacteristic, right? Which makes me feel like it was more of a wake-up call in terms of just understanding now, all those guys, what the standards are in the SEC. Arkansas is good. They are a good basketball team. But what are they made of? What are they made of? It's all about the response. You get punched in the mouth. I get the cliche. Do you come out and punch back? And I think that's a big part of this game, is shaking off what happened against Tennessee and getting ready to go out and return the favor, get your lick back against Ole Miss.
Absolutely not. We never want to let one game beat us twice. We've won 7 out of our last 8 games, so we're not going to just act like that stuff didn't happen and we aren't who we are, right? We're a good basketball team. We had a bad night, bad day at the office, and so we want to take what we can from that so that doesn't happen again, so that we can be better the next time out. Again, it's about the response. Whether you win or lose, it's always about the response. And we have fighters in our locker room, and I'm excited again for practice today. We had a hell of a day of practice yesterday. And if yesterday is anything like today, then we'll be prepared to fight, to fight.
All right. Well, we'll see if they're ready for that fight, because now insert Ole Miss. Folks, I promise you, they're going to be ready to fight. This ain't Kermit Davis's Rebels, okay? This is year 2 under Chris Beard, who many of us thought would be currently in year 1 of his tenure at Fayetteville, but we all know the story about how that didn't work out, and you wound up with John Calipari. What we do know is that Chris Beard wins everywhere that he goes, and he's already doing that at Oxford. He's got a really good team. He's got an NCAA tournament team there, folks. Those Chris Beard teams, they have an identity, right? They're always tough. They're always physical. They're hard-nosed and well-prepared. Well-prepared is the key. Here's what Chris Beard had to say about Calipari's first roster at Arkansas. Gives you a little bit of an insight into maybe how he sees this team and the challenge that his boys are facing as they come into Fayetteville.
Yeah, I would say even though it's Coach Cal's first year at Arkansas, the team and the roster has his DNA all over it. You got talented players, some guys on this team that'll play in the NBA. Got a balance between veterans, mostly portal guys, and then some young talent. Athletic, definitely the ability to play off the dribble, get downhill. Defensively, 3 legitimate shot blockers on this Arkansas team. So, you watch the team play. It looks like a Coach Cal team, even though it's their first year.
There you have it. The Rebels are 12-2 so far on the season. They're ranked 23rd in the AP poll. Arkansas unranked right now. Ole Miss 29th in the net. So this is right now a quad 1 game for Arkansas. Arkansas is at 40th in the net, so a little bit below that. Saw Joe Lunardi put out his most recent bracketology, the updated one on Tuesday, and has Ole Miss at a 7 seed going into this game. Arkansas a little bit lower at a 9 seed. So right now, if you look at that SEC pecking order, they got Ole Miss just a notch above the Razorbacks. Say what you want about where these two teams are at right now, but don't think Arkansas needs to be below Ole Miss in any basketball standings ever. And so they have an opportunity here to change that, to rectify that, if they feel like that shouldn't be the case. So Ole Miss 1-0 in SEC play. They got a double-digit win at home over Georgia over the weekend. You're like, oh, I wish Arkansas could have started with Georgia. Georgia's better. They're improved this year. They're a bubble team. They're kind of right there in that conversation. They also have a really, really good offense. And to credit to Ole Miss for holding them to just 51 points in that game. Now, not a lot of meat on the bone for Ole Miss in terms of high caliber wins. They beat BYU. They beat Louisville. So a couple decent ones there. They had a 2-point loss to Purdue in a game that honestly they should have won. They kind of choked it away down the stretch, and they got blown out recently at Memphis for their 2 losses there. Ole Miss, this is a team that they're talented now. They're capable of beating anyone. Again, they just should not be walking into Bud Walton Arena and getting out of town with the dub. Like I said, this is a prove-it game, in my opinion, for John Calipari and these Razorbacks. But to talk, fill you in a little bit more on Ole Miss and what to expect, the first thing that jumps off the page to me about the Rebels, they turn teams over like crazy, and they really do a great job of taking care of the ball themselves. Okay, so they're 7th in the country in both turnover percentage, defensive turnover percentage, and steal percentage. So they're generating a lot of takeaways. Then on the flip side, they're 4th in offensive turnover percentage. So very, very few amount of times that they actually turn the ball over. That's probably exactly where you want to be if you're a team, right? And so then you go look at, maybe over at KenPom at their efficiency. They're not elite offensively or defensively, but they're consistently good, very solid on both ends. Top 35 in both offensive and defensive efficiency so far this year. Pretty good 3-point shooting team, 35.5%. They got multiple guys who can knock it down, including some of their big guys. So you got to be aware of that, especially with the way that they play with some of their small ball lineups. Now, everybody wants to know about this. Ole Miss coming into this game ranks 208th nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. So for those who are naturally, you might just have a little bit of an eye on that particular statistic after, I don't know, giving up 1 million offensive rebounds to Tennessee. Ole Miss is a very physical team. They're a good rebounding team. They don't get on the offensive glass anywhere near what Tennessee did, and they're also undersized. Now, what that means is Arkansas should not have issues in this category in this game. We'll see if they do or not, but just based on what we've seen from that group so far, this ain't Tennessee that you're getting in bed with here. Pretty balanced group scoring-wise. They got 4 guys who are in double figures on the year. They're not the deepest team. They got a lot of bodies in there, but they really go about 7 to 8 deep comfortably. They'll stretch it out a little bit. Like they'll probably play 9 guys or so in this game, but a couple of them will just play sparingly. At least that's what they've typically done. One thing that I've really noticed about Ole Miss this year, comparatively speaking to last year under Chris Beard, is that they're playing a lot smaller with a group that looks a lot more like Chris Beard's teams at Texas, and especially Texas Tech. Do you remember that group that Arkansas played to get to the Sweet 16 against Texas Tech a few years ago? This team kind of reminds me of that in terms of their makeup, their size, and some of the things that they're doing. If you remember Ole Miss last year, they had the 7'5" kid, Sharp, from Western Kentucky, and then they had Musa Cisse, another 7-footer. So they were just rotating the giants in and out throughout the course of the game. And so that's not necessarily the case with them this year. This year, it's 4 guards, really, and a more versatile front court. Even the big guys that they have can step out and shoot a little bit and do some different things. That has allowed them to switch a lot more screens, which is something they're going to do in this game. And do some different things defensively and attack you in different ways offensively. Returners to know, guys you might remember in that backcourt, Jalen Murray, who transferred into them from St. Peter's a couple years ago, really good, small point guard, but he's kind of a wired to score. He's a playmaker, I guess is what I qualify him as. Matthew Morrell, a guy who's been there going into his 4th year at Ole Miss now, and he's been just a consistently good scoring wing for Ole Miss for years. And then in the front court, Jamin Brakefield, who really, really liked him. Wish he would hit the portal and could have been a guy that Arkansas got, but just a classic stretch forward, got some size, can step out with some guard skills and shoot that thing. Newcomers of note, I thought they did a pretty good job in the transfer portal. Went out and got just a veteran lead guard in Sean Padula out of Virginia Tech. Nice player for them. They've got their version of a Dude Thero and Dre Davis. They went out and got from Seton Hall. And then 2 big men that I loved in the portal, especially when Eric Musselman was around, and Malik Dia out of Belmont and Mikael Brown-Jones out of UNC Greensboro. So if you guys were tuned in when we were rolling through the portal updates, last year, you absolutely know exactly who those guys are. Nice players. So a little bit undersized, but they're versatile. And I think the pieces that they have really do fit their system, which is something that Chin Coleman talked about as well in terms of preparing for Ole Miss and their offense.
Very dynamic. They run a system of which there is no absolute. There's not a pattern that you can say they're going to absolutely do this or they're going to absolutely do that. A lot of teams have that kind of system where you know what it is that they're going to do. These guys run motion and it's all random and it's all different. And so while they're moving and cutting and screening, because you're going to have to guard every kind of screen there is in the game of basketball. There's going to be pin downs. There's going to be flex screens. There's going to be rip screens. There's going to be flare screens. There're going to be staggers and doubles. And while all of that stuff is going on, these guys do a great job of getting you to occupy against all of the screening actions, and then that gives them an opportunity to go one-on-one. And all 3 of them can break off at any time and go one-on-one. But they're not the only ones, right? The 4 men that they play, they can also go one-on-one. When they put Brakefield at the 5 or at the 4, he can also go one-on-one. So everybody is a weapon in their offense, and they do a good job of finding those opportunities.
So what that sounds like to me is a couple things. One, Arkansas mano-a-mano, like they're going to have to guard their yard. But 2, they're going to have to be really dialed in with their defensive communication, right? Because sometimes you need to be really dialed in to a detailed scout, right? Just knowing what the actions are, what's coming. You can kind of predict some of those things and get out ahead of it. With a team that operates like Ole Miss does, which is more read and react, as Chin Coleman was talking about, it's about having your head on the swivel, right? And having a loud voice, communicating with your teammates, all 5 guys being in sync. It's going to be really, really important that those guys are in lockstep in this game. Matchup wise, let's talk about it real quick. If it was me, I'd be switching my starting lineup at this point. I think to me, it's about getting your 5 best players on the floor. I would put a Dude Thero up at the 3. I'd insert Trevin Brazile at the 4. and go with a bigger team. I don't anticipate that Arkansas is going to do that, though, in this game against, like we talked about, an Ole Miss team that's a little bit smaller and a little undersized, comparatively speaking. And I think with their traditional lineups, they actually match up pretty well in this game. So I would probably go with Boogie on Jalen Murray there. And just, why not? Imagine that. Boogie gets another New York matchup against Murray, who he started his career at St. Peter's from the Bronx. There you go. But just another really good veteran guard. This is one of the oldest teams in the country, by the way, Ole Miss is. But yeah, Murray's nice, man. He's averaging more than a dozen a game, shooting over 43% from three, 5'11", so another small, quick guy. He's not the same type of player as Zakai Ziegler. This is not an easy matchup by any means, but it's a more favorable matchup for Boogie than maybe that one was. And like we heard, he was feeling a little bit under the weather. Maybe he's feeling better here. Regardless, I guarantee you that that Boogie Fland is itching to get back out there and have a better performance than he did against Tennessee and Knoxville on Saturday. I'd probably go DJ Wagner on Sean Padula. I just think you need a lockdown type of day defensively from DJ. And I don't know if Arkansas is going to do the thing where they're switching a bunch of screens again, like the way matchups kind of dictate the way these two teams pair up. If you look kind of across the board, position to position, it would kind of make sense for them to do that. Either way, I think you need a big defensive effort from DJ Wagner in this game. Padula's good. He's just a solid addition for them. He can play on the ball or off the ball. Leads them in scoring right now, 14 per game. Another guy who's shooting 40% from three. And he's got 51 assists, and he leads them in steals. So, he's a guy that's a pretty complete player there. You need DJ to kind of neutralize him, I feel like, in this matchup. Now, I know it sounds crazy given the circumstances. I get it. I would probably start John L. Davis in this game, and I would probably match him up with Matthew Morrell for defensive purposes, and then hope that his offense comes along. As Chin Coleman was asked about him, he talked about how Tennessee is a tough matchup to come back in and play against and thrive against after you've been out for a couple weeks, and there's some truth to that. But we all know that it's more than that and a little bit deeper than that. He said that Cal's got some things planned to get him going a little bit, to get him some better looks, some easier shots. We've heard that before, and we haven't seen it yet. So hopefully, at the bare minimum, Nelly kind of gets back to where he was right before he left with injury, which was at least he was being aggressive, hunting his three ball and knocking that thing down. So maybe you get that. I don't know, but for defensive purposes, rebounding at the position, I think this is probably the way to go. I love Carter, and I think he's really been playing better basketball lately. But when he really struggles defensively, and it's obvious to see, it's usually against teams like this, right? Because he's pretty good for the most part, one-on-one, keeping his man in front, whatever. But when teams are really screening, cutting, and reading, that is when he gets into a little bit of trouble, loses his man, misses an assignment, he's not communicating, and Arkansas starts getting burned for it. So he's going to play regardless. But either way, I think you need a lot bit more, actually, out of that wing position than you got at Tennessee, regardless of how Arkansas goes there. Thero, I mean, I'd put him on Dre Davis. Like, Davis has been a really good ad there for Chris Beard. He's averaging about 11 and 5. He is usually a matchup problem as their four-man. He's 6'6", good frame on him. But I just think Arkansas has a better version of him with Thero at that position, who really needs a bounce-back game. Like Cal said it after the Tennessee game, like that was probably just the second game all year where Thero's kind of laid an egg, been a bit of a dud. It was 0-4 from the free throw line, only had 6 points. He's so much more impactful than that, and I don't think he's going to be held down long. So look for a bounce-back type of game from Thero there. I think this is a good matchup for him. And then I go Jonas Adu on Malik Dia. Now, with that being said, I would not be surprised if we wind up seeing maybe a decent amount of small ball out of Arkansas, Trevin Brazil at the 5, or even Thero at the 5. I think a couple things. It depends on if Adu's eating inside, which he should in a game like this. And then if he can hold his own defending, some of those bigs on the perimeter a little bit, and he's capable of defending a pick and pop guy. He's pretty mobile at his size there. If he's holding his own there, okay, fine. But sometimes you'll see the Ole Miss goes pretty super small. They'll throw Brakefield in there at the 5, as Chin Coleman mentioned earlier. and he's about Thero's size, and he's got a guard skill set. He shoots a bunch of threes. And so in those instances, maybe you counter with Thero, right? Or Brazil. And then you got Thero still at the 4. I think this could be a good game for Billy Richmond to make his impact on the defensive end, especially against a team that plays a little bit smaller. It opens up more opportunities for him to get in there and get involved. So we'll see what it looks like. I'm anxious to see how Arkansas works their rotation. On paper, this does not look like a big Z game necessarily, but I hope I'm wrong, because he's one of the guys that I really feel like Arkansas needs to get going. And it's going to be important that they figure that out maybe sooner rather than later. A few quick keys here, and then we'll get out of here. I think Arkansas has got to come out and engage the crowd early, right? Get off to a good start, get an early dunk, an early 3, some defensive stands, the things that get the crowd going and get them engaged, set that tone for the atmosphere in the building, right? It's a two-way street. Get the crowd in there, but then you got to give them something to cheer for. I think it's going to be really important to kind of set that atmosphere, create that 6-man environment, get loud, because that can help you on the defensive end and disrupting what Ole Miss is trying to do. Find the shooting stroke again. Arkansas, they've been a little bit streaky here lately, but man, they came into that last game, shooting 37% from 3 as a team. That's pretty good. And at this point in the season, that's signs of a team that can shoot it. Now, 6 of 29 is not where you need to be. Against Tennessee, it's too many threes, and then obviously they didn't make enough. And they had a lot of really quality open looks in the second half that just weren't falling. So kind of get back to where you're at there, where you're going, 8 of 20, 9 of 21, something like that. And I think you're going to be in a pretty good spot. I would say overcorrect with your physicality, right? If that means that you bump a guy off his spot or get hit for an illegal screen or whatever because you took a guy out, whatever. But I think they need to set that tone of physicality. Hey, we get it. Like, you guys take on the identity of your coach. You're supposed to be tough and hard nosed. You saw us getting pushed around by Tennessee. Not happening in Bud Walton Arena. I think it's going to be really important. We've seen Arkansas get super physical with some teams this season. At that Michigan game, for example, in Madison Square Garden, there were bodies getting thrown around in there, and Arkansas was up for that challenge. So they've got it in them. They just got to get back to it. I think matching shots on goal is really important. It's a little bit of a catch-all statement. Now, Tennessee had 16 more shots than Arkansas in that game on Saturday. You're not going to beat a team ever if they get 16 more shots than you. And it shows, because Tennessee shot less than 40% from the field, and they still beat your ass by 24 points because they had that many more opportunities to do it. So how do you even that out? Well, it's 2 things. One, don't allow them to get 24 offensive rebounds or get 24 yourself, right? But they got to balance that out. And I think they will in this game. And then the turnovers, we mentioned it. Ole Miss turns you over and they don't give it back. And so, obviously you want to limit your turnovers regardless, but can you get some opportunities? Can that crowd get you going a little bit to get opportunistic, get some steals, get out in transition with some easy buckets? And then I just think some individual returns to form, right? Jonas Adu had been so good, and then he got sick before that Oakland game, and then he kind of no-showed against Tennessee. A few guys no-showed. He's got to get back to it. Right, Arkansas ain't going nowhere if they don't get better performances out of Jonas Adu, because we see what the rest of that front court can look like at times. He's got to be the anchor there, so a bounce back from him is going to be really important. Boogie, obviously, was he sick? Was he not? We don't know. His dad says he was, but 5 of 15 from the field, 2 of 9 from 3. That has to be a one-off type of performance. We know that as Boogie goes, Arkansas goes. It's going to be really important. Thero, we mentioned him kind of getting back to his norms. I'm confident that he's going to do that. And then, return to form. Well, what does that even mean from Nelly Davis? Because we haven't seen him in his true form the entire season. I think that there has to be levels to this with him. I do. I don't think it's going to be a deal where all of a sudden he just finds it and he looks like the Florida Atlantic version of himself, but you got to have more than you got against Tennessee. So can you get him back to where he was, in those leading up to the Michigan game and after that, before he set out for a couple games, right? Where he had a handful of games in a row there where he scored in double figures. He was giving you multiple 3-pointers every game. And then he was really competing on the defensive end of the floor and on the glass. Like, can you get back to that and just show signs of getting in attack mode a little bit? can we drive it and get to the free throw line a couple times just to see that you can still do it? Because I know that he can. He didn't forget how to play basketball, I don't think. But show some signs of life there from him, something that gives you at least a little inkling of encouragement of, all right, well, that was a step in the right direction. How's he going to look on Saturday against Florida? As opposed to, a nothing burger, and then you're going, this just ain't going to work. That's not the situation that you want to be in. So we'll see what happens. Arkansas needs to win this basketball game. Like we said, not a must win, but a really important prove it opportunity. You don't want to fall to 0-2 in this league. You want to establish dominance on your home floor. And I feel good about Arkansas's chances to bounce back and get that done in this game tonight. We'll see what happens. But as always, afterwards, make sure you tap in with us for the Pot at the Palace post-game show. We'll go live immediately following the action, or maybe a few minutes after that, because I got to drive down the road from the arena to get back home. So, give me like a 5-minute cushion there. Maybe we'd appreciate that. If you're not subscribed, make sure you get subscribed to the Inside Arkansas YouTube page. You can also catch us in podcast form, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. Listen to me yap about Arkansas and Ole Miss. I'm excited. Can't wait for the game. Looking forward to talking to you guys about it afterwards. It's been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas and the Pot at the Palace. We'll see you this evening. Everybody have a good one.